Hello everyone, greetings from the 7th of Nero. AJ here with a, albeit rather random, look at the warships of the Iron Kingdoms. Like some of the other pieces on more niche aspects of the setting, such as languages, newspapers and economies, much of this is speculative, as little extant lore really goes into much detail about naval architecture or naval traditions. While artwork and sections of lore do provide information about particular episodes in history which are relevant to naval warfare and how ships of the Iron Kingdoms might have been designed, much of it is incidental at best, and little explores either the technology itself or architecture other than general descriptions of what makes one nation's ships distinct from another's, if even that. But this is to be expected since, as with other such more niche subjects, the writers aren't naval historians or engineers, and more pertinently, War Machine and Hordes is a game of stompy machines and monsters, not ships, even were we to consider Scar, Admiral of the Black Fleet, and the Sea King. And the seas are, comparatively speaking, a much rarer as a prominent campaign setting in most RPGs, for which IKRPG is no exception. Unlike the armies of the various nations of mainland Immoren, with but one exception, navies are a decidedly junior service, so much so several militaries either do not have a formal navy, or do not have one at all. It should come as little surprise then that Crix is the only power of the Iron Kingdoms and Immoren which places a greater focus upon its naval forces than its armies, being an archipelago, and the successor to an ancient confederation of pirate kings. Meanwhile, only one large body of water links the coastlines of the states which might conceivably compete over its resources. Consequently, being landlocked, Lael has little use for a navy beyond an underpaid and under-equipped river police force, while Rule has only a flotilla of monitors to protect the riverways which lead to and from Arms Deep. And at the extreme is Ios, which has neither coast nor major waterways beyond narrow and unnavigable streams and brooks. Thus, naval traditions of historic note belong to the five powers of Crix, Ord, Signar, Cador, and the Protectorate of Menoth, though this lattermost is, or rather was, the youngest yet shortest lived. That the maritime history of the Iron Kingdoms is checkered is an understatement. It is unknown quite when the pirate kings of the Crixian archipelago rose to power such that they are often treated as a piece of mythology. Like the Orgoth, they appeared on the western coast of Immoren one day in ships enhanced by magic. While not of the power of the Nightmare Empire's black ships, those galleys of millennia past would still be a terrifying sight to see or prospect to fight against for the Iron Kingdom's ancestors. Needless to say, such adversity brought about advancement in ways which led to the overall improvement of the defence of coastal lands, larger ships with ever-improving seaworthiness, protection, and means to conduct battle from their decks. For hundreds of years, a decades-long cycle repeated itself during which the pirate kings made inroads on the Immore's mainland, but were repelled each time by the Caspians, Tordorans, Cards, and Thurians. By the time of Torok's assumption of power, the legacy of the pirate kings as a whole was decidedly miserly thanks to the inventiveness of the peoples of the western coast. In particular, the Tordorans designed what became the apex of naval architecture in Immore's wooden-hulled sail ships. This was the Durgenmast, a warship of unmatched size, originally for grand funerary rites, but which became the term for a similarly sized ship of battle, possessing a high freeboard and bristling with heavy guns. Over time, the Durgenmast replaced many of its broadside guns with more flexible upper-deck barbettes, and eventually the turret, which was developed further to allow the carriage of twin guns. During the succeeding centuries, particularly the years of the Clockwork Renaissance, technological advancements came thick and fast to Western Immoren, and one in particular had a profound effect on maritime travel, the steam engine. Though it is unclear whether the steam locomotive or the steamship came first, it was inevitable for such technology to be adapted for use on the waves. Due to their size, however, it could only be applied to the largest ships, whether of the line, fighting galleys, or merchantmen. Engines have improved over the following generations, and though they remain the same bulky pieces of, albeit vastly more refined, engineering, the efficiency of their output has meant they can remain in continuous operation for long periods of time, even so long as an entire voyage in the most recent designs. Much longer than when the first steam engines were installed on sailing ships, for which a burst of speed was only practical to offer improved performance and maneuverability in battle, but wasteful when simply cruising. And though many steam-powered ships remain paddle-driven, the propeller screw has slowly risen to replace it in the most modern warships, with such equipped steam frigates able to outrun all but the most determined black ship captain in open water. But the fighting qualities of these ships would need to undergo an evolution of their own as well, for even the great Durgenmast squadrons of Tordor were not enough to defeat the Orgoth invasion fleets, or even delay them significantly. Therefore, after the hard-fought victory over the invaders from the west, and leading into the Iron Kingdoms and modern eras. Measures were gradually attempted and taken where practicable by naval architects to afford ships a better quality of defence against enemies of all sorts. Signoran, Caedoran and Ordic ships had to contend with not only each other and Crixians, but eventually also the galleys of the Protectorate of Meloth, whose Idrian vassals brought a new approach to naval warfare. As such, with the advances made in metalworking made over the course of the Iron Kingdom's era, the Ironclad became the new standard of warship, possessing the same broadside firepower of the Ordic Durgeon masts. They had the added protection of up to several inches of wrought iron armour, sometimes on top of more than a foot of teak or oak, because, collectively, their most common enemy were the raider flotillas from Crix. Heavier weaponry was not so much of a priority, since a regular long gun had long been proven effective against the Sitixistos and the larger ships of the Slaughter Fleet, but against the black ships aboard which the Crixian admirals raised their flag, almost no mundane gun is effective, irrespective of its calibre. Against them, the arcane would need to be applied, both to protect and to destroy. For though metallurgists know uniform plates are stronger than their equivalent weight in separate sheets riveted together or fit together like slats, knowledge and understanding has far outstripped the ability to make use of it amidst a climate of ongoing and unceasing war against one power or another. Indeed, not even the steel water flats can work steel plates large enough and thick enough and of sufficient quality to armour the ships of the Signoran battle fleet in this fashion. Thus, all see the necessity for arcane means to supplement what is available to navies as offered by science. But even then, magic is still a rarity, and the army takes the balance of the warcasters and battle mages, and but for Ord, this is a shared trend throughout the Iron Kingdoms. It is not difficult to see the quandary many admirals face in carrying out their responsibilities of protecting their nation's shores. In many ways, one may consider it a miracle that seaborne invaders have rarely made long-lasting inroads into the Immoren's mainland, but in so saying, few rulers are so foolish as to ignore the needs of their navies entirely. Consequently, for all the aforementioned technological advances, and others besides, relatively few have been implemented, in favour of supplementing existing naval units with magically empowered crew. For some nations and their fleets do not have the luxury of upgrading their assets via extensive and expensive refits, and no shipwright will ever say building a ship from the keel up is either a quick or cheap endeavour, particularly a Steelclad one. Given the persistent threat posed by first the Crixian black ships, Revenant ghost ships, and now the returned Orgoth war galleys, the navies of the West know even the strongest of their warships are not necessarily sufficient to contend. However, arcane means are proven to be effective in all respects compared to the costs involved to arm or armour a ship to an extent as to withstand such an enemy vessel's assault and attack with effect in return. Meanwhile, some elements of the latest metallurgical developments remain untested in battle, and others of even just the last couple decades are known to be as useless against the magical as what was available more than 4 centuries ago, the first time the Orgoth were expelled from our shores. In the search for the most economical balance between warships' ability in battle and war, and their costs to build and maintain, they have thus come to an uncomfortable impasse, as it were. Thus, ships are built and launched to be optimal against their equivalent rivals, or at least as close as their builders have managed, but aware that they may easily be outpowered by a single enemy warcaster or sorcerer. Worse yet, but also relevantly, the Orgoth have come with what passes for warjacks, similar but distinct. All who have faced these strange chimeric war machines thus far have been surprised by their power on the battlefield and the manner of their use by their masters. Unsurprisingly, most of the military institutions of the Iron Kingdoms have seen this threat as the great priority to address, despite the advances made in warjack design over the last few decades. Nevertheless, it should come as a shock to no one that out of a sense of expedience, it is to the army's equipment that investment and resources go, whether intellectual, monetary, or production. Such developmental focus, whether it is small arms, armour, ground-based artillery, or especially warjacks, is of more appreciable value in the eyes of most, both political and military. And given the improvements which rivals much closer to home have made over the centuries, it is natural for this to be the focus. Even so, when the seaborne threat remains, and designs for exploration have extended further for many nations than ever before, there is no doubt the Iron Kingdom's expressions and demonstrations of their sea power must evolve.